Hey everybody, welcome and thank you so much for joining us. On today's episode of Convention On, we feature Dave Salmoni, big animal predator expert. Bears, lions, tigers. So I gotta say it, Dave is not Joe Exotic. This is not about Tiger King or some freak who could buy a bunch of fancy animals. Dave is a legitimate expert, enthusiast, activist, etc. What we do talk to Dave about is how he went from small town Ontario to living with a pride alliance in the African savannah, how he has maintained a career in this industry, which we all know can be full of competition, challenges, and unfortunately a lot of negativity. We get real open and honest with Dave about the value of ego, the danger of ego, and why you need to keep it in check at all times. You're going to love this one. Dave Salmoni, Predator Ego. Not what they build them for. That's not the intended capacity.
I've seen movies where that all happens, and that's why we've always decided a motocross bike is the way to get out of the city.
It's a bad sign. I don't know what's the comparison. Like, I need the motocross of internet. I mean, I'm serious. I'm gonna be in dire situation here real soon in Hawaii.
Oh, you're first to go, brother. You are considered non-essential island.
Yeah, they're just gonna cut us off, dude. The satellite's just gonna go dead. Hey,
oh man.
Real quick before I start to ramble for too long, I wanted to introduce our guest today. I'm so excited to have you on here and just catch up and share you with our listeners. We have Dave Salmoni today. Dave is. I was trying to think of a succinct way to introduce you. I'm just gonna call you an animal trainer. Please don't take any labels.
Yeah, it is a true fact that I at one point earned a living as a trainer for sure. But certainly,
I was gonna say, bear with me, Dave, and give yourself a proper introduction.
I would love to if I knew what it was. I know that at work, Dave Salmoni, Animal Planet's large predator expert, is what they tagline me at. But they only do that because for the same reason as you have, is like, I don't know. Like, if we define ourselves from our jobs, then I have quite a few definitions, I think.
Well, we do a lot of research leading up to the show. And so obviously understanding you were coming aboard, I did some of the research and I heard this podcast with you from 6 years ago. I think it was 2013 or 2014. You're actually talking about workouts, right? And so you do a lot of media. I'm sure you probably remember this, but you were describing yourself as a predator expert. And so it's got to be pretty consistent if 6 years later, after all the media, after all the trips to all the places that I think we might see you on a video, that you're still using that same vernacular. That's got to be it.
It's certainly, and I know that a lot of the discussion points are going to revolve around passion. That's certainly where the passion is. I feel like, at any given day, I could tell you about lemurs. At any given day, I could tell you about whatever it happens to be. But I think the thing that I have spent more time, more unique time, and done different things with has to be. Now that's a jerk move. I know my beer is all the way down in the basement. It's definitely Predators. Predators is definitely the one that I love the most. Predators are the things that I'm most fascinated by. I would say the entertainment side of my career all came in the fact that I was playing with all of these big predators, and TV came and said, "Hey, we'll pay you to go play with the animals." I'm like, "Do you not realize I'm already doing it?" It's like the idiot that pays you for something you already have. But fine.
It's hard to imagine. And I'm not trying to boast you up here, Dave, but not only have you made your presence very well known, but you've been around for a while now, man. It's not a new thing. I know you've been with Animal Planet 20 plus years in some capacity. But to maybe some of our listeners in the U.S. and worldwide that aren't familiar, the quickest way, if you Google Dave Salmoni, you're going to see this, handsome big white dude playing with lions in the wild. That's going to be the easiest takeaway. And obviously there's much, much more to it than that. I mean, he's sitting here with all of his limbs intact. So there's clearly a lot of experience and education that goes into that. But yeah, Dave is, he's crazy. A lot of the pictures you would see in the media you would see of Dave is just shockingly large animals in covering Dave or hugging Dave, and Dave is in his ultimate element. It looks like me in a hot tub, when he's hugging a tiger or a lion or something like that. So you talk about it as though, you're training. You mentioned lemurs, like that's not what I think of when I think of you and what you like to do. I see the looks in your eyes when you are potentially, dealing with a life-threatening situation. It's a little bit different than when you're holding like a hedgehog, and trying to like show and share, like that's your element, man. Like you just like being in that.
Yeah, definitely right. I think that's where the passion came. I think the other stuff is fun. I think the same as you can't imagine anybody in my position who doesn't love dogs. I love dogs, but I don't want to become a dog walker as much as I love dogs.
Right.
That's not my passion. You're right about, there's a different flare in your eye when you're doing the thing that you love. And, also the thing that you think that you're good at. I think that everyone has a certain something inside them when they feel like they are doing something that they were kind of meant, something that they truly understand. I heard an awesome quote from Tom Brady, of all people, last week, where he was talking to somebody before the draft when we all know he famously got drafted 1,199.
Yeah, super late, whatever.
And he said, I know some people may not think this from watching my career, but football's always been very easy to me. And I completely understood what he meant immediately, in that I don't mean everything I've done is very easy, but I definitely feel like I've understood things faster. When someone sees a lion coming, I already saw it 30 seconds ago. If someone says, oh, geez, Dave, don't push that button, that's the button that's going to have him coming to eat you, I can comprehend why they say, no, that's not exactly how they think. That's not exactly how they make that decision. And I'm not talking these are dumb people without any experience. I'm just saying I've always found myself in scenarios where I just kind of felt like I get it a little bit. And because of those sensitivities and understandings, you get more excited. And then that's sort of, it fills your passion, it throws your passion into it. And then you become what it is that you're good at, I guess.
It's really nice to feel, unique, even in a small skill set of professionals, right? Like you might be sitting around some people who went to school longer than you, or, whatever. It might be a heritage thing and they got, lineage has been, I would imagine, in that world that exists.
Yeah, totally.
But there's something inside you that you had before anyone taught it, and like you maybe have probably developed it and maybe kind of gotten better at utilizing that thing, but that thing was probably always in you, right? I mean, I
think so. I think that I've often said to people, you can teach 75% of my job, right? So if I saw another guy, either one of you guys, square shoulders, athletic, good sense of yourself, your abilities, with those skills, I can teach you how to read a dangerous animal of any kind. Mm-hmm. And I can teach you the logical, smart ways to operate in a scenario 75% of the way. The unfortunate truth about dangerous animals, the ones that, are life or death, when you're in those other 25%, you're dead. And you don't get two chances to be dead. I can't go back to you and say, hey, let's break down the film and see what you did wrong. You cannot teach certain parts of what you need to have when you're dealing with those kind of animals.
Well, and from afar, those things seem to be like, sorry to cut you off, Mike. I'm here too.
No.
So like, those appear to be superhuman, I guess, traits if you're from afar, right? If I'm watching you, not just you, if I'm watching anybody from afar, you could teach 75% of people how to hit a baseball too.
Yep.
But there's that superhuman trait that kind of creates this different type of an aspect. So, I mean, I guess, when I think about somebody who's an expert with predators, I think about people who are either they were fighters at one point in time, or they were athletes at one point in time, or they wanted to get involved with that. Can you take us back to that kind of like beginning, the first time you touched a big cat, became interested in a big cat?
Yeah, very easy.
Or like, how did it start there?
It's such an interesting... Everything's cliche. I feel like at my age, everything becomes a cliche, and then you understand what a cliche is. So when I was a kid, on my walls were pictures of big cats. I was an athlete. I loved football. I'd watch the Chicago Bears every single day that I could, but I didn't have Walter Payton on my wall. I had lions and tigers. If I have a scrapbook from when I learned to talk. And my mom, what are you going to be when you grow up? And it was a zoologist. And my mom laughed. She said, what the fuck's a zoologist? So the interest in animals began at birth, let's call it. Always liked them. But then the growth pattern was just, I didn't do well in school. I didn't like being told what to do. I just liked animals. If I had to do a speech or a book report or a project, fine, I'll do it in animals. At least I'd be interested. Fast forward to wanting to go to university. I didn't truthfully want to go to university. I wanted to leave home. That's what you did. You left high school, you went to university, you had a great party. So that's biology, because once again, I didn't know what else to do. The only thing I was really in love with was animals. And then it was through that. University eventually says, we're not going to tell you what to do. Do whatever you want. You want to drink your way out of your tuition? Go.
Yeah.
And if you actually like this and want to do this and do something, then here. So in my fourth year, you had to choose a thesis. And I got lucky enough to do mine on black bear behavior. And that was the first time I was outdoors, my own brain, my own hands, tracking bears. And I was working with the Ministry of Natural Resources trying to figure out how to manage nuisance bear populations.
Okay.
And it was the first time I was like, oh, this is a thing. Like you can now do this, and there are people who do this, and you can be in the
could be a job, right?
Yeah, And it was so exciting. I can't tell you at what age is that? 20? You're 20 years old with a telemetry thing in the middle of the bush looking for bears. And there were times you'd turn your machine on and the machine would say, there's a bear within 9 feet of you. And you look at the thing, it's like, oh my God, it's a 700-pound bear. He's within 9 feet of me and I can't see him.
And I can't see him.
Yeah. So that's where you're like, holy crap. So I really excelled at that part of university. And then obviously at that point, it's master's, PhD, all that kind of stuff. But at that point, I could see the way forward was lab work. And that wasn't me. I was like as dirty and hands-on as life got. I wanted to be the guy turning on the machine with the bear around him. I didn't want to be the guy in the lab going, hey, go out and get me some data.
Yeah.
So the only place a guy growing up in a small town in Canada that I know that can work with animals is a zoo. So I started applying to every zoo around because I thought, I didn't know what people did at zoos, but I thought, hey, that'd be a great place to work because you'd be hands-on with animals. And I got lucky enough to go to a guy who owned a privately owned zoo. He was an animal trainer, and he believed that animals did not belong in cages. He believed that if you were going to be at his zoo, you should be trained and allowed to come out of your enclosure. And that was everything from the elephants who would go for swims every day and play in the forest, the tigers who could go and do it, go swimming, climb trees, do whatever they wanted, to the lemurs and everything else. And that's where my animal training and exotics started.
Like an internship type of a thing?
No, I left university. I literally showed up with a business suit on and my thesis in hand saying, hey, I want to work for you. He laughed at me. He hired me at first. He laughed at me. My first day of work, he says, I don't care about your research. I don't care about your thesis. He goes, you're 220 pounds. You look like you can shovel a lot of shit. And that's what we do here. And he said, but if you're interested, this might be something you'll find fun. And interestingly, I was 2 weeks into that job. So I'm just a shit shoveler. I'm out shoveling, and obviously you don't start at the worst. I am walking out with a wheelbarrow full of poop. I see a big male lion with a mane running around the corner, looks me in the face. And I look him and I see the leash and there's nothing attached to it. No person, there's just a big male lion. I'm like,
oh shit.
But this is it. This is me saying to myself, I stared at pictures of lions since I was 4 years old in my bedroom. I stared at those pictures like, I wonder what that feels like. I wonder what it smells like. I wonder. And from every picture in my head, that lion looked happy. Just like every dog that runs up to you with a wagging tail or hunching with their teeth growling. To me, this lion looked happy. I could tell he liked me. I walked up to him. I started petting him. I'm like, man, oh man, I'm finally doing it. The excitement blew my brains out. And then the trainer came running around to catch up his lion. He's like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. Anybody who would run up to a male lion to pet it with nobody around to keep him safe, you are the dumbest man on the planet. But he said, but this lion clearly likes you and you clearly like it. Do you want to start coming in on your days off or before work? And you can be my backup to walk the lion. So I would come in every day before work. I would cut up all the lion treats. I would get all the leashes ready, everything you needed for a lion walk. And I would then walk for an hour before work and an hour after work so that the lion could get out and have some extra walks. And that was sort of my impetus into the career that I've had.
Okay. So you're basically a college kid. You want a job. You want to start in, and it's that almost adverse thing that well, clearly you don't see it as an adverse thing, but it could have been something that happened with the lion at that point in time. Was that in Canada?
Yep.
There as well? Okay.
Yep.
So, Dave, if you don't mind, like, because you're clearly like kind of broken, and I'm not going to blame any of this. I know you well enough, and it needs to be expressed that, like, you know, you come from a normal family. You know, you're from Sarnia, pretty blue collar town.
Yep. Pretty normal upbringing. Like, you know, I grew up in a cul-de-sac, and my dad was a chemical engineer. My mom was a figure skating professional.
Totally.
There's no reason for me to do this.
Yeah, that's, and like, so to kind of tie two things together, I met Dave through my wife, who was working as a personal trainer at the time, and Dave and Nicole met, and then Nicole introduced me to Dave, and Dave and I just kind of hit it off right away. At least in my memory, we did.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it was just like, oh, I'm like an engineer and I got to wear a suit all the time and kind of act in a particular way. And Dave was like this kind of, you know, celebrity. I know it's going to make you blush, but Dave was a big deal. But you could tell that Dave didn't like want to be treated like a big deal. And, you know, so like I felt like right when Dave and I met, we were just like, cool.
And if I can interject and cut you off a minute, and I was thinking about this today as I'm sweating. I was out for a run, and during the times that we're in, I was super excited that we were going to be talking together, because I think the one thing that we both enjoy, every time I see you, you smile. You always got a smile on your face, and you've got such a positive outlook on life. And I was like, oh, fuck.
It's so true.
You know, and because of that's the thing that I think I remembered most when we first met, was just, he's a positive guy. He's a smiling guy. He's not the kind of guy, even if he had a crappiest day at work, I would be like, hey, Mike, how's it going? Oh, well, you know, it was a real crappy time. I think that's certainly the types of personalities and human beings that I really, really adhere to and like. And you want your life. You want positive people in life. So certainly I feel the reason why we hit it off so well was just, you're always such a positive, happy guy. And those are the people you want to spend time with.
That's real sweet of you, Dave. I have very specific memory of the first time we hung out. You agreed to come over and give us some lessons with our new French bulldog puppy. And you were very clear, like, dude, I'm not a dog trainer. Like, I don't, honestly, normally I train cats, enormous ones, but I could probably come by and give you some tips. You know, so we went up to the park. We may have had a beverage or two to accompany us.
After, for sure.
Afterwards, yeah, not during the training, of course not. Only a professional at all times. But we got some lessons from Dave, spent a couple hours with him, and I give him at least some of the credit for how amazingly well behaved our dog still is to this day.
Oh, Whaler, buddy.
This is Whaler saying hello, as is Nicole.
Hey, Nicole, how are you? Hi, guys.
Oh my gosh, this is so trippy.
Whaler, how are you?
Hey everybody, it's Mike at Convention On. Just want to take a quick second to remind you how important each and every one of you is to the show. Not just as an audience, but as contributors. See, at some point, Ryan and I's Rolodex is going to dry up. So we depend on you, our listeners, to share with us the people in your lives that have inspired, motivated, uplifted you in any way, shape, or form. This show's about success and happiness. I hope we all know people like that in our lives. I know not everyone wants to get up on a podium. Not everyone's comfortable with a mic in their hand. It's up to Ryan and I to make that a comfortable setting. Pass their info along. We'll reach out to them. Trust us, we've been rejected before. We'll be rejected again. It's really not the hardest part of the process. If you have someone you'd like to share, thank you in advance. Pass their info along. We look forward to reaching out to them. Keep smiling, everyone. Stay positive. Stay healthy.
So there's a point between shoveling shit in a captivity-free zoo, if that's
no. I mean, it's definitely cages. They lived in cages, so a zoo. Okay. But they all, at least a couple times a day, would come out, exercise, entertain their brain a little bit. Their home was still very typical zoo. You could go to that zoo and you'd see them in the enclosures, and they'd have the little buildings behind the enclosures. But at least twice a day, every animal, if the tiger liked to swim, you'd try to make sure he had to swim that day. If the lion liked to go for a run in the field, then you'd try to make that happen for him. And every single animal had its own sort of set of trainers that kind of knew what that animal's favorite thing was.
Gotcha.
But still very atypical revenue source, meaning, people had to come, enjoy the animals. We did a lot of feature film training and commercial work and all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of eventually became my role. My role was the big cat guy. I ran the barn that housed all of our big cats. I trained them, and then we tried to, find jobs that would then help us pay for all these lovely things that we like to do for these animals.
For sure. Yeah, because by the time I had met you, Dave, I mean, I guess you're talking about kind of the early days. I mean, what are we talking? Early 2000s or late 90s?
Late 90s. I think I started in 98, left in 99. Maybe I started in 97, left in 99, about 2 years.
You got to be working at that place. And I mean, at that point, you had already made a huge jump from kind of Sarnia is not that small by any means, but at this time, you're out of Sarnia. Are you like in the GTA? Like, are you in kind of big
Greater Toronto area,
closer to big city living, right?
Well, I mean, it was a small town. In fact, it was smaller than any of the towns. I went from Sarnia, let's say 70,000, to Sudbury, where I went to university, 400,000 ish. And the town I was in, probably 30,000, but it was at least a suburb.
Gotcha.
But no good being close to the GTA because one, that job is arduous. It's almost 7 days because the cats need to get out every day, and I'm one of the only people to walk them. And I couldn't afford a car. I lived in a trailer right at the zoo. So it was very small.
So you're pretty much in the bush at that point, even. I mean, and that's like
secluded. I was definitely secluded. I didn't really have any old buddies. Like no one coming to visit me. Like I had a bit of a dating life through like maybe if I met somebody at the gym, it was the only place I'd really go. Otherwise, I didn't really know anybody. I remember I was playing hockey, and it was I knew I was in trouble. Like very small town mentality, if not that small a town. And I signed up for the men's league because I'd played hockey all my life, but very house league-ish. Yeah. And when I signed up, they're like, "Oh, by the way, it's full contact." And I'm like, "What? Men's league full contact? That sounds crazy." So I go, "I'm like, oh, that's fine. I'm 20 and I'm physical, and I'm fine with all that stuff." And everyone kept trying to pick fights with me. And I had a bit of a reputation for that kind of behavior in my university time.
Sudbury, a town of 400,000. You had a reputation. Good for you, Dave. Good for you.
But I learned through that you didn't want to be known as that guy.
The tough guy gets into a lot of fights.
Oh, it's such a pain in the butt. Yeah, so if you're trying to have a date or something and someone taps you on the shoulder on your date, like, well, that's the end of that date. So plus, at this point in my life, I was getting punched in the face by lions and tigers every day, getting bit. So someone dropping the gloves and smacking me in the helmet a few times, I was like, I'll just take the punches. I don't give a shit. Plus, I remember it was a $20 fine, and you had to miss a game the next week. And I had to save up for weeks to pay the $150 to get in. I didn't have $50. So I was like, there's no way. So eventually I kept asking the commissioner, I'm like, what the hell's wrong with your people? Why do they they're like, well, they all grew up together. You're the first guy in 10 years to join the league.
A new guy to fight.
Yeah. They don't know anybody else to fight. So then eventually the guy's like, you've got to stand up for yourself one of these days. So I said to them, I said to the commissioner, okay, you just tell me who the toughest guy is, and that'll be the guy that I'll stand up to, and then they can all just leave me alone at that point. And he's like, that'd be right. I go, but you got to waive the fine, and I'm not taking a day off, a game off.
This is my social life.
I need leniency for God's sake.
And I literally had to save for this. So he's like, no problem. But the problem with it was like, hey, in 3 weeks is when you're playing the team of the toughest guy.
Okay.
And I'm like, all right, well, tell him. So then, of course, it starts going around this tiny town that this new guy's going to fight so-and-so. And the thing that I didn't realize that I should have been smarter. they kept saying the so-and-so brothers. Oh, Dave's fighting the so-and-so brothers, the so-and-so brothers.
You're like, no, I'm just fighting one of them.
I didn't even hear
my
it.
knowledge.
Yeah, I didn't even hear it at the time. So eventually, period one, there's a crowd. I'm like, crowd in men's league? What the hell is going on? So eventually I'm like, oh, let's get this thing over with. I go over. He's lined up against me. We do the tap like we've all seen, the gloves down, very polite, helmet off, the way you're supposed to. And I do what I have to do. And as I'm taking care of things and he's trying to go down, I'm like, I better make sure it's a big enough scene that people leave me alone for the future. So I make sure he doesn't go down, and I finished it in the way that I wanted to finish it. But because of which, and this is where the brothers part came in, I started getting hit in the back of my head.
Oh,
and I'm like,
man.
What's going on here? So now I'm like, that's fine. I've been in hockey forever. Someone's going to protect me. Like my own line mates, it's going to be a line brawl now because this is what hockey is.
Yeah.
I grew up in Canada. I know how this works. If somebody jumps in, then my buddies will jump in.
Yep. Presumably.
Nope. They all just left it alone, kept their hands off. I'm like, oh, now I see what they mean by the brothers. And the worst part about this whole story, I do all of this, right? I take care of everything against all my better judgment. I didn't want to do any of this shit. So I take care of everything. The next day I go to work, and this guy was sort of at my work, and he was trying to do this weird conservation project in Africa with these tigers. And I was kind of coaching him through some of the tiger stuff that he needed to know. And literally, it's 10 o'clock the next morning. He's like, hey, do you want to fly out to Africa with me? So that was my last hockey game ever. I never ever got to like play in the
That was your retirement. Retirement was the fight against the brothers.
Man.
It was a waste of time. Had I waited one more game, I wouldn't have had to do any of that stuff. I had flown off to Africa, had the rest of my normal life.
Well, I was going to say, and the rumor floating around that small town, dude, is that, you just didn't show up for another game.
Right,
so, I mean,
right.
who really won the fight? I mean, they kept playing, Dave. You haven't showed back up.
Your hockey reputation was forever tarnished.
Yeah.
That
guy's knuckles were so sore, he never played again.
That is such a beautiful story of Canada. Like, I don't even think that sounds bad. That is just, dude, men's league hockey. It's not comparable. There's nothing in the US that I'm aware of. Like, we like to, we'll get some men's softball leagues. That is not the same. That's not the same at all. Like, I used to know guys that were playing men's league hockey at 11 o'clock on Sunday nights. These are like men in their late 50s and then suiting up and heading into the financial district first thing Monday morning. Like, I don't know of anything like that, any sports that are that much of just threaded throughout the people of Canada, man. Like,
I think there is a difference between a human being in the financial district. He becomes someone different for that 60 minutes that he's on the ice. Whereas like when you play softball, the nice guys are the nice guys. The whiny babies are still whiny babies.
Yeah. You get to put the equipment on. You get to be a different person for for that amount of time.
It's so true.
And those skates, they'll take out. I mean, I've seen some 280-pound dudes that are real graceful on skates. Oh, yeah, you know what I mean? Where it's holy shit! Like, how do you still move? Like, I mean, I've seen you walk, and it's sketchy, but on skates, wow.
I'm the exact opposite. They're like, they watch me skate. And they're like, what? Can that guy even stand up on running shoes? Like, what's going on here?
He must be a good fighter.
I certainly wasn't a goal scorer.
So that's a really good introduction, because that's kind of what I was getting at, like with just bringing up, like, were you near the GTA? Because at some point you either started to get an appetite for something bigger than, literally and figuratively the confines of that zoo, and you made a big leap. Like, what that leap to kind of go from, I don't know, behind the scenes to in front of the camera. Was that intentional, or did that just happen?
It was a process. So the gentleman that I talked about, he was friends with my boss, and he was one of the guys that started the ecotourism model that exists in Africa today. He's one of the first. So African safari used to mean hunting safari. Yeah. And he and his family early on, a previous generation to his, decided that it was a photographic safari, they could make way more money off the same male lion than you could if you shoot that male lion.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can have 1,000 people take a picture of him and only one person shoot him. So so Africa at the time was the only place in the world that was conserving their big cats. And he was just in Asia, and he thought, well, if Asia did the same thing where they partner with the locals and they make a better quality of life through ecotourism, then these people will realize the animals are assets and not, things that are detriment to them. So he then realized he couldn't make that park in Asia because the laws, it would be making new laws everywhere. Whereas in Africa,
too much.
Building a safari park already existed. The only difference then would be, how do you get tigers into a safari park?
No.
So that's where I came in. He said, listen, why don't I take captive bred tigers? No one would begrudge me for taking these animals out of a cage and giving them 35,000 hectares to run around in and hunt and live freely. And that way, the ethics and the morals of it was a little bit more sound. So what we did, so I guess that's the project that he was over when, and he just realized very quickly he wasn't going to be able to handle cats when they became adults, particularly if we're going to try and teach them to kill things. He's a rich guy that just had knowledge, but no handling skill. So my job then became, he was going to build this park. He was going to go with the Asian governments to show them how ecotourism could work for them. My job was literally just to take captive bred tigers and teach them how to hunt and fend for themselves in the wild. At that same point, as you say, the captive world wasn't really my true passion. The animal entertainment industry, where I was an animal wrangler and like that part of it, there were some ugly sides of that business that I didn't like. So the walls were already cracking in that world for me.
Gotcha.
I was young enough to still not care about my career or what I'm going to do with my life. It was just like opportunity after opportunity. And that certainly at this point had led me to some really cool things.
Yeah.
So if the guy's like, hey, I'm leaving in a few, like basically he gave me 12 hours to decide. He's like, listen, I'm leaving in 12 hours. And I was like, so I literally just took a zoo truck, put everything I owned in the back of a pickup truck, drove all the way to Sarnia, throw it all in my parents' garage, drove all the way back, and then made it for the plane with the tigers.
Was it like, hey, are you ready to leave this job and come take a new one? Or were you going to have some sort of safety and that you're... Yeah.
So my safety was that I said, listen, he didn't guarantee me a job forthcoming. He said, come and help me, do a couple weeks, couple months. Mm-hmm. But I just said, I don't know you. I met you like 3 days ago. You're a friend of my boss's. Just make sure it's a return ticket. Once again, it's always been my personality to say like, well, let's jump in both feet. It wasn't like I was worried that he was going to put me into the slave trade or, I'm a 220 pound guy.
You weren't super worried about like your job, right? Sounded like a really cool opportunity.
I was near the end. I was near the end of that job already for all the things I was mentioning.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So there was no risk in that way. I just said, hey, let's try it. And then the more I went on that process, the more I bought into the conservation of it and the love of tigers. And I really did feel like we were changing the world. And that project took me 5 years. I did teach the tigers how to hunt and fend themselves. I was the first person in the world to ever do it. China came out. They signed up with us. Like we had a lot of successes in that way. But the other thing that this wealthy guy had was a production company. So he was filming the whole thing.
Okay.
I was still supposed to be behind the scenes, but it kind of became impossible because all the really dynamic killing side of things, no one else could be in front with them than me because the tigers wouldn't allow.
Gotcha.
If they're throttling an animal, they wouldn't allow just anyone to come up and move their jaw over so that they could kill the animal or whatever it is.
Is this where Ron the tiger was?
Ron and Julie. Yep.
Ron and Julie. Okay.
So they came out of the States. They were born in Cincinnati. They came to Canada to me to get them handleable and used to people, build that trust. And then the South African group was the ones that brought them out there. And I kind of took care of the training side of that.
Okay. I saw some clips somewhere, probably YouTube or somewhere on the internet.
And that's where I started my career.
With them. Yeah. You look like a baby. Like you really, not that you look like an old man today, but you had that like, that boyish jaunt. Like I'm going to walk up to a tiger using a cane. If you want to YouTube some of the stuff and check it out, it's definitely worth it. But it was really cool because I hadn't known too much about you, but I did see that video today, and you kind of start to see, and you probably say this about most of us, but like when you have a career on camera, you get the luxury of watching yourself grow up a little bit, right? So do you look back at some of that footage now these days and kind of see how you grew up over the time? I mean, because it's kind of chronological, right?
My kids aren't old enough to sit down and watch it with me yet. I imagine that'll probably be the time that I do that.
Okay.
I see clips all the time, of course. Absolutely. Like,
sure.
People send it. I've become more introspective, and I do think about the path a lot more than I used to. But no, like I haven't gone back and like actually sat down beginning to end, watched the doc and gone like, wow. And I'd like to, because I think I've come full circle. I think that while I was doing that stuff on a daily basis, I was always afraid of being defined by what I was doing. I didn't mind, like I say, if Nicole and Mike and I were out for beers one night and amongst us we were talking about lion and tiger things, that was fine. But there was times that I hated being the lion guy. Where you almost became a bit of a sideshow sometimes. Like, I don't mind if my friends want to share that stuff. So I fought against all that stuff for a long, long time. I didn't have anything in my house that would make you think, oh, this guy's clearly into big cats. And now that I'm out of that, I don't do as much adventurous stuff. I've been at home with my wife and kids for the last sort of 4 years. I guess my point is, because I'm not embedded in it as much, I'm more confident in who I am as a human being and not worried about the eyes in. I think I would like to look back and go, wow, that was an amazing path that I went on and journey that I had. I don't know when I'm going to have time to do that, but maybe when the kids want to do it with me.
Right. Or maybe you work on a content piece someday, right? Like what a mature way, and what a fortunate career to be able to be at, like, this stage of your life, middle of your life, age doesn't matter like so much, but to be able to have that like maturity and understanding.
It's during these times of great uncertainty and concern that we at Convention On must remind our audience. I'm not trying to throw that shit at you guys. We're all hearing it enough these days. That latest commercial with your corporate bank promising to be your new best friend, or your insurance company is your new greatest advisor. We're not trying to be that. Ultimately, if we can offer a little bit of distraction, a little bit of hope, we know you have borderline infinite options. And the fact that you've chosen to take a moment to spend your time with Ryan and I means more than we can possibly express. So we just wanted to take a moment and say thank you. If you like what you've heard, we promise there'll be a lot more of it coming. Stick around, stay tuned, keep smiling, everybody. It's going to get better.
Back when we used to shoot film, you'd have to wait weeks before you know how it was, in focus, in frame, whatever. Now you're just like, play it back on the monitor. Let's all watch it and high five each other. And the cameraman's face is always like, oh my God. So like, there's other versions of that, but it happens.
Same thing, right? Like, and it never, of course it happens like when you're like, that was the best. That was the best one. Did we get that one? No, we got all the warm-ups. We did not get that one.
I got plenty of lions sleeping, but the kill, nah, we just missed it.
So that's a really fair reintroduction. We're
Mike, turn your mic up just slightly.
A little more. How's that? Any different?
That's better.
All right.
There you go.
It's no snowball.
We're re-recording a little bit. And by that, I mean, we screwed up last time. Ryan and I had some technical difficulties, and our guest was kind enough to give us another chance. Personally, I still have a really vivid memory of our last discussion, and I can't really express what it's like to like lose that. I still got it, but the goal is to share that conversation with people. So we're gonna try. We're gonna try our best.
As a documentarian, there are times in our lives that we want to share, and there's times in our lives that we just take it in for ourselves. And let's just suggest the second half of our conversation last time was just for us.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah. It was a good conversation, and I'm sure we'll be able to reboot it today. What if we could ask, and maybe just like a good way to kind of pivot into it, because we did just come live, is tell us about a time when you lost like the best footage. Like what's something that you notably remember losing because of that digital, kind of footage.
The double punch, we call it.
The double punch, right?
I think the most glaring moment, and it was personal to me for so many different reasons. So typically in the filmmaking side of things, I filmmake so that I can have the adventures and the experiences, particularly in my younger years before mortgages and kids and wives and things. Sure. I knew I had to make a film, but my heart wasn't in the film. My heart was in the experience. But that very first project I did with the tigers, that was a 5-year project. And as film and television started paying the bills, I really did get invested in the type of footage that we got, because I really did it was the beginning start. It was the beginning of the digital age, where we weren't waiting for the film 6 weeks later. We actually got to watch it. So I can remember one time my tiger cubs that I was teaching to kill things were just graduating into big things.
Okay.
So we started off with springbuck, which is a 50-pound little deer, blesbuck, similar. And then all of a sudden we brought some wildebeest in so that they could actually have some danger in their hunt. And as I say, being a 5-year project, there was lots of times cameramen would come and go. And, oh man, this just reminded me of another great story. I'll finish this one. And there was a newish cameraman. The wildebeest was happening. My tiger got picked up by the antlers and smashed on the rocks 7 or 8 times. And I was about to rush in, but it's a tiger and she's got to learn. And, that dad,
sure,
wanting to intervene and not intervene. She figured it out. Her brother luckily came in and took the thing down. But I ran over and wanted to see the details of how she actually got out from underneath it, how the male, I wanted to see if the male was protecting her or just going after the kill. And the guy was 6 feet from the action. You'll never have an easier shot in your life. And his face went yellow. And I'm like,
just gone.
I can still remember. I didn't feel any better about it. I was definitely a young enough man to not be forgiving. Yeah. I was like, you get out.
Yeah, you had one job. Right?
So it's funny you say that, and this will be the shorter abbreviated story. Same project. Tigers were learning how to kill. I had to take kills away from tigers if they killed in an area without fencing, because we had 35,000 hectares, but we hadn't paid for all the fencing because it was really difficult fence and it's an expensive fence to make. So they'd kill. I would take it away. I'd bring it to the fenced area, and then they could sit on the carcass for as long as they wanted. And taking a kill from, at this point, my tiger was 400 pounds, the male, and mean as tar when he was on a kill, of course, like a cat should be. And once again, new cameraman, which is what triggered the memory. And the tiger went for me, came at me. I had him on the leash. He dragged me into a bush full of thorns, got torn up, dragged me back out. It is a back and forth. Tiger is charging me. I don't even know where the female is. And the cameraman's brand new. It's his first day. And he's on what we call a donga, a dry riverbed. So he's 20 feet back, because this is dramatic. I'm telling us, claws and teeth and hair. It was crazy. Sure. And once again, please forgive me. I was a young man at the time, and I was in a fight with the tiger. I saw him standing there, jaw open, eyes wide, and camera pointed at his shoes.
No.
And I look over at him. If you're not going to film, get the fuck out of here.
You and Christian Bale. You saw your Christian Bale side.
Crazy. I'm like, why are you here? You're going to die. I'm going to die. And you're not even going to film it? What the hell? Anyways, so there are mistakes made in every profession. I feel like I can deal with them a lot better than I used to.
Well, there are two brothers in the Sarnia Hockey League that are probably well aware that about how you used to deal with those things, right? And so hopefully, as you got older, you kind of, I guess you do kind of turn a page a little bit where your anger kind of hopefully fuels a little bit more logic. That's probably literally what maturity is, or what our parents would tell us maturity is being able to fucking turn that a little bit instead of trying to attack somebody, but try to coach them a little bit.
I totally agree with you. I read an interesting book a while ago, and it wasn't really of topic conversation, but it described how your brain is maturing all the time, well past your 50s. And because that's true, you can imagine it's not just experience that ages us. Your brain chemistry is changing, and different parts of your brain fire in different ways as a 50-year-old as it would as a 20-year-old. So when I think back and say, man, I was so primal, instinctual, and I really didn't have control of those impulses, I can't really pat myself that hard on the back right now and say, look how mature I am now. Because truthfully, probably what happened was my brain chemistry has changed. I am less instinctual. I do have a more active cerebral part of those decision making. Oh, should I punch that person? Oh, here's all the repercussions that are going to come if you know. Whereas, like, can you tell a 21-year-old what the repercussions of punching someone are? Except for it feels fabulous.
Yeah, I mean,
well, interestingly enough, like if you think about like the anthropology of it, right? Like, and this is like pretty nerdy, right? But like, if you think about the anthropology of it, it would seem pretty normal that as young men, understanding how it works, that you're out presumably hunting another of the opposite or your own species, right? There is this like bullish, fightish type way. And then as you get older, you start to relax a little bit and you start to become a little bit more introspective. I think for most of us, actually, maybe even like all of us across all cultures, there's not so many things that you can say that like really touch all cultures, but for sure you become like less aggressive, you know, over time, as you approach things. You know?
And as you say, in the middle of a hunt, you want to be thinking, what are the repercussions of this?
No.
You just want to get after it. That woolly mammoth is mine.
There's no time for that. I'll never forget, man. I was in my like mid to late 20s, much too old for this sort of behavior, but you know, it's a bad night at a drinking establishment, and there's a kerfuffle. And I had evidence. I had evidence of it for a good week. And on the following Friday, I was out to lunch with, you know, some more like senior members of my firm and like the CEO, the boss. And we're talking for like a good 20, 30 minutes. And he finally looks at me and he goes, do you have a black eye? And I was like, oh, yeah. Like, why, you didn't hear about like what happened last weekend? And he literally like food fell out of his mouth. He dropped his fork and he said, you got punched? Someone punched you in the face? And it wasn't like a, oh, let's go get him. It was, and this sounds so bad because I know it's not true, but it was like he had never even met someone who had been into a fight before, you know, and like, he wasn't like, are you okay? He wanted to know every detail of it. He wanted to know like what, and I was just like, listen, I'm glad to go down these roads with you, but I'm more concerned about the fact that like, you're a father of children and you've never been punched in the face before. Like, I'm not saying we all need to go out and get it done, but yeah, I mean, those punches, each one I've gotten has taught me a little bit. I'd like to think I've learned a little bit from each punch.
Yeah. But some of us, needed a few extra.
Sometimes you need more punches than others, you know, they're very much true.
An interesting story. I did a show called Man versus Mensch. And the premise was a guy who'd written a book, and he was having children, and he was one of those guys, exactly like you said. He was fascinated by this side of it, had never been in a fight before, and a few other manly things. He'd never gone camping before and all this stuff. Yeah. And so my job as the host was to take him through all these things. And one of them was he wanted to get in a boxing ring, put boxing gloves, and take a punch. Now, keep in mind, he's 140 pounds. I'm not. And I'm not a boxer, but I certainly know how to lay a good punch. And
wait a minute. So you got to deliver the punch?
The real show. Yeah, we shot. I could send you the sizzle reel that we shot for it. And it has this punch in it. And I can remember specifically because the director was a close friend of the guy who was getting taught. And I'm all about a TV career this way. When I was making the show, I was well into the fact that TV is TV and it's not real life. Let's not pretend it's all that seriously. So I had already said, like, I know how to punch you, but I'm going to graze your cheek. Like, it is going to skin. It'll sound awful. It'll give you that slap. It'll look like I leaned into it. Your head will snap back, but your nose is not going to bust. Your teeth are not coming out. And seconds after I sort of explained all this to the guy, the director leans in and he goes, he told me that part of a deal is a real punch. He's writing a book and he wants to know what a punch feels like.
Dude,
like,
this is a bad
deal's a deal.
Yeah, like,
deal's a deal.
Yeah, where's the waiver, man?
Man, I whopped him.
You reneged on the plan. You punched him.
He stood there like this. He stood there. I just was like ready for it and let me step into. I mean, obviously it wasn't my hardest, craziest.
Back a little bit, right?
But not that much. Not that much. Like I'm talking, the nose came down, and like with boxing gloves on, so there's a little bit of reprieve. Sure. And I think he had a headgear on, so like, but still, like that nose there was a lot of blood.
I need to see this footage, dude.
Yeah, I'll show it to you.
That is a brave dude. I mean, I definitely jumped in a few times knowing I probably wasn't going to win, but not, you know, it was
like, stand there, let me punch you.
No, yeah, I've never signed up for that. That is insane. That's insane.
Yeah. So anyway,
can't believe that didn't get bought.
Right? Agreed.
Yeah. Someone needs to buy that show. No, Dave, that's such a beautiful, one of the things we chatted about before, and I would love to revisit this on this note, is the difference between like Dave at home and TV Dave. You know, if there is a difference, I don't think people can appreciate, and like, has that changed from Dave, the 28-year-old, to, you know, Dave the father, Dave the husband? Are there two different versions?
Yeah, there are different Daves. Like I often tell Deborah, my wife, that when I go to like a function or something, she doesn't want to be around me because that Dave wants to tell the story. I know what my job is there, right? So like if we're at a dinner party and you're maybe the head of some sales department, or maybe you're a top producer or something, you can pass me the wine and I'll be like, oh, that's South African wine. Let me tell you the story. This one time I was in South Africa, there was this lion, and I'm into the lion story.
You're there to host, right? Yeah. No, I get that.
And I have to be Dave of the jungle, for lack of a better term, right? Because that's your job.
Sure. What does Kimmel call you? Kimmel always calls you the Canadian
Tarzan.
Canadian. Okay.
So there's that part of me. There's part of me that I have to sell myself all the time. So if you're a producer, so I guess if I was to overscope it, I have to assume like every time we've been out for drinks and we've socialized lots of times, I don't think I've probably ever started a story. You should see this tiger that I did this thing with it.
No, yeah.
Unless it just happened. Like if I just got back and I got bit by a tiger, I want to tell them the story. But like, that's after we're close friends. Very rarely socially do I want to be the center of the room. So I guess there is that. But you touched on a different part, and it's different. So there's always been entertainment, Dave, and there's been the quiet guy that wants to live in a tent. You need to be both for my career path and the passions that I've had. Mm-hmm. But there's also the family version of me and the chill at home version of me. And that is its own path and its own desires. And those two people can be separate and the same. But interestingly, and we touched on it before, was I've always been on television as me. I've never been the guy that gets invited on a Kimmel and wears khaki, right? Because when we go to the bar, I don't wear khaki at the bar. I know how to dress to go to the bar or go to my mom's for dinner or be on a late night talk show. So it would be weird for Dave Salmoni. So I've always tried to be myself in every situation. So because of that, the 20-year-old version of me is very, very different than the 30-year-old version of me. And therefore now the 40-year-old version is different. And I think that's one of the secrets to longevity within my career, because I get to be myself, and then myself then becomes relatable, maybe relatable to different age groups as I age.
Yeah, that's true.
But I get to go. And interestingly, and I don't remember where we cut off, so if I'm repeating myself, please edit this part out. I was given this wonderful bit of advice from George Strobolovis. And oddly, I was speaking to him yesterday, subsequent to our conversation. And I remember him sitting there, and he's really interested in wildlife, and we were having a chat. And one thing he said to me was, just be yourself. Know who you are and be yourself. You'll be drawn in the entertainment world a million different ways, but you have to know who you are and what you want out of things. And that'll guide you through the years, rather than just being a 3-year flash in the pan, which most people are in television. And I really feel like that was some of the best advice I was ever given.
Oh, it's phenomenal, right? Like, I mean, maybe even easier to take than actually follow through with. You know what I mean? When you're 24 getting into Hollywood, I would imagine who you are is whoever the hell they want you to be. You know what I mean? Like, for a lot of people.
You're so right. There's so many flashy things out there that could distract you, right? If I am Family Guy Dave, average Joe go for a beer. And I feel like that's why I'm relatable. I feel like the people that watch my shows is they feel like I'm just Dave, that I could be their best friend. Oh, my buddy Steve's just like you. I hear that kind of stuff all the time. And I appreciate that. And I'm also the guy that lives with lions. And if I know that's me, that doesn't go when some entertainment show says, hey, do you want to put a suit on and walk this red carpet? Or do you want to be the host of an entertainment show where you're going to report on the entertainment news?
Right.
I've been given all those job offers, and sure, they probably pay a little bit better, so that's shiny. Maybe you're living out in LA, and at the time I'm living in a tent, and all of a sudden they're saying like, "Hey, let's go downtown LA with all these pretty women around," and all this kind of, like. There's a lot of things that distract you. That's not me, but oh man, that'd be interesting.
Yeah,
more money is always interesting. Fancy parties, yeah, totally right. And I think that I was able, through that advice, and introspection keeps coming back into this conversation. I was able to stop myself at times just before I was like, oh, let's jump on this opportunity. Yeah. It sounds like it's awesome, and go, is this what I want? Is this a way to get back to my passion? And is this something I could see myself happily doing? Pay or no pay, because I'm in that job now. I'm currently in a job that I would do if I wasn't getting paid. Is that entertainment show the same thing? So that helps.
Do you think that building such a cool relationship with Animal Planet early on kind of helps you give a little bit more liberty in that type of a thing, as compared to having to go in a media career from... I don't want to mix up the entities, because I know that Discovery and Animal Planet are, if not the same, but similar in entities.
They're owned by the same company. Just Discovery Inc. owns them both. Yes.
But instead of going from one case to the next case to the next case, do you think that being able to be introduced to that type of interaction, or that type of, I don't want to say fame, because that's not what makes a personality. Certainly hearing what you just said, but like, did that help you out in your career over the long run?
I think it must have. The thing that I think helped me in that way is they're an honest network where they said, we just want passionate people. Passion pops on television. So I had some guys early on that just said, Dave, you do your thing. All of the business side of it. Right. And like I say, forget, like when TV came to me, I didn't have a single dollar in my pocket. I was living in a tent. There was nothing I had, so nothing I wanted to hang on to. And people kept saying like, well, just tell me what you want to do. I want to go swim with sharks, or I want to go play with elephants, or I want to. Mm-hmm. So there was so much of me being me, because that's all I was being offered. They're just saying, go off and do your thing. And I think that was my career for many years, which then I had a base and a structure, and I'd seen other people fail, and I'd seen other people, get egos, and I'd seen other people become people I didn't want to be. By the time I decided, oh shit, this is my career. I'm now 30 something with a mortgage. Mm-hmm. I really like this job. I really like the people I work with. How can I be as successful as I can? I'd already seen failures, probably had a few failures myself, and a long base of this is my wheelhouse. This is where I'm happiest. Right. So yeah, I think the one interesting thing about the entertainment industry is if you're chasing dollars, you will probably, unless you're the 1%, you will probably someday be without any dollars. You just chase the best check until you don't have
any industry, Dan. I'm Dan. I don't know why the fuck I just called you Dan. I'm so sorry, Dave. Dave, I think that any industry, Dave, I think that's true. Honestly, because it just time and time again to work a lifelong thing and be successful. And we should also establish that probably nobody on this call defines success as money or salary, but happiness, right? Is that like, I don't think that you can define it by that kind of a scoreboard. Like the cash and the success part, and if fame is a product of your investment as your career, then like that's one thing. But like the cash can really only be a scoreboard of some sort. If it's your driving function as to why you play the game, it's almost inevitable that you lose.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I also think that there is a point, unless you want to compete with the Bezos of the world.
That's a good point.
I think that there is a point when you've paid for your retirement, you've paid for your home, you paid for your kids' education, whatever the things we're expected as adults to do. Every dollar on top of that is just, I'm not that guy, so I don't know. I don't see where the value is to continue on that path. If your path was money and you've got all the money you're ever going to need, you got your retirement, you got everything, well, what's another 100,000? What's another million? Who gives a shit? Whereas if your goals and your driving force is the passion of whatever it is that you do, I think that is easy to continually find fulfillment, even once you've paid for your retirement or your mortgage or your kids' education or these types of things.
So true.
So I do think that there's an inevitable level of hollow past a certain point if money is your attributing factor to happiness.
It's kind of a slight fork from that conversation, but it ties into what you're saying about longevity in your career and how you've managed to be so successful. I wouldn't say despite, but you knock on yourself. I think I've heard you call yourself said you've fulfilled stereotypes most of your career, and you're okay with that. And I think honestly, Dave, like your sincerity in who you are on screen and off screen, I'm sure it has very, very much to do with your upbringing and your folks, but I'm also going to give some credit to your circle of friends that you've like seemingly, at least from my standpoint, have stayed in pretty close touch with, right? I mean, those are your childhood buddies, right? The guys that I know, you grew up with them in Sarnia, right?
100%. Well, not all those guys. Some of those guys I met.
Some of them college,
some of them, yeah, exactly right. So first year university would be a large group of the guys that you know. But yes, I do have also some Sarnia high school, even my one guy that I was on the phone with before I got on this. I mean, my parents, our parents were friends, and I've known him his whole life. He's 3 weeks younger than me.
Yeah.
So yes, I have that circle of friends, and it does circle back to your poignant question about, how do you keep track of the different days, the entertainment Dave, the wildlife Dave, the Dave at home. Mm-hmm. I definitely felt like times in my life that the two were not anchored. You were living untethered because you weren't living in a world that someone else had. I can't go. There wasn't somebody else who had done the things that I had done that I can call up. Like, this is how I'm feeling. Like,
right.
Is it correct? Should I get out? I have to be as honest as I can and say, like, there's been lots of times that I've been so fucking lonely in the middle of the bush. I spent my entire 20s without any friends really, and girls and dating and fun, because I was chasing this passion. And then maybe 3 times a year I'd come out of the bush and have a taste of that. But there was lots of times I was like, am I doing the right thing? Like, am I blowing my 20s? And it's those friends that you talk about that you get back with them. You realize you're not losing friends. They're always going to be there for you. So that's important. That's where the kudos go. You're like, I'm not sacrificing my friends for this passion. It's the fact that they're supportive, get off, go, that we'll be here when you get back. On top of which, they're not going to then treat you differently. I've never come back to that circle of friends and been like, the first time maybe I was on Kimmel, they didn't go, now we're going to treat you different. No, now all of a sudden you're cool.
Stoked for you, but if anything, they're gonna wait for you to show the slightest bit of anything, and they're gonna knock you down so quick, right?
Totally.
Like, that's the reason why I brought it up, is because we can talk about keeping our ego in check and staying grounded and this and that, but like, there's no manual. There's no real clear cut way to do that. And depending on your lifestyle, like when you're bouncing back and forth between Africa, Toronto, and LA, it's pretty, like you said, there's no reference for you to look up and someone for you to call and be like, is this normal? Sure. Or am I going into a new stratosphere here? So I wanted, and you did a great job of sharing, your friends and how far back you go with them, because I think that's something that we see from each and every one of our guests, is that no matter what, man, if you are successful and you're happy, it's an island. Not an island, but a community. You're not right there by yourself. You're really not. Yeah. If you are, it's not going to last. If that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like, and I have to believe you can relate to this. There is always going to be a time when you're sitting amongst those friends, the ones you've known for that long. And I know you two have known each other that long. Mm-hmm. When they're not in as comfortable a space as normal, and you recognize it, and you need to prod it out of them a couple of times and give them an ounce of perspective. There's times when you're in your own troubles so deeply that perspective is so difficult, where a friend that's known you over that whole arc can poke you in the back of the head and say, you're always successful. Yes, this might be failing amongst you. But trust me, then you're going to pivot and you're going to be fine. Or whatever it is, your friends that know yourself like that can give you the bigger perspective because they've known you for a longer time. And I really do think that helps you be successful because it helps you take risks. It helps you being sure of yourself. There's a lot of things that come to value when you have somebody that knows you, but also that you respect their opinion. Lots of times you can get advice and roll your eyes like, okay, yeah, thanks for the advice. What the fuck do you know?
Same thing said by someone else, you can be defensive about, you can be, there's a million different ways to take it. But when that old buddy of yours tells you, dude, get over your shit, man. Like, I hear you, but are you done? That's
well, there's like a trust in that vulnerability, right?
Totally.
It's really hard I think in almost all professional careers, right? To be vulnerable verbally to your coworkers.
Oh, definitely.
Because that trust is such a challenge to build over time. And maybe it's not so ironic that it's only friendship that built that trust to where you could be both, right? Like you could be vulnerable and you could seek advice from them.
Yeah.
Because it's way easier to find a relationship where like you get a bunch of advice than it is to which you like have this like reciprocated vulnerability with your friends. Yeah. And it's almost like, in a lot of cases, or at least in a lot of cases, the guest, and certainly for me, I can't, I speak for you, I guess a little bit, Mike, is that those relationships are built and fostered by continuing to nurture them year after year after year. It's not even so much that your friends had to have been these phenomenal individuals, right? Like you are a portion of what you surround yourself with, but it's that being able to nurture those relationships year after year after year after year, so that when some of you fall down, you could help each other get back up. Yeah. And it just works better as a group, I think, than it works as like a one-on-one thing or, even like a two-on-one thing,
Yeah.
And you got to trust in being able to do that.
I totally agree with that. You guys, and like I say, I forgive the listeners if it's something we talked about in the previous part, but I know in our previous conversation, when we talked about ego and its value, it's interesting. I think this discussion kind of goes into that, and I've been thinking a lot about it since we talked about it because it wasn't a perspective. You were telling me friends giving perspective, and you guys gave me a great perspective with our last conversation. Mike, you asked me about the value of my ego, and it's often been considered a detriment. And I've always fought with that. I've always fought with the fact that there's a difference between arrogance. Of course, arrogance means you're comparing yourself to other people, which my level of quote unquote confidence has always not, I've never compared myself to other people, but I have been often confident. And that confidence, I think, is built in ego. And I think what's interesting about our previous conversation about that, whereas it made me go back and think and say, there was a lot of things my ego did to me, and those are the easy things to find. I got nearly killed by a lion. I remember telling a story where I almost got a group of my friends killed by elephants. Sorry, all because I thought I was so sure. But yeah, I know it's a unique thing to say. But like those are the easier things. You're like, oh, my ego cashed a check, and I almost couldn't come up with the money. And yet, the way that we were talking about it. Most of the risks I've taken, or the value of some of the risks, when I jumped on that plane to go to Africa with a stranger I'd met days before, when someone said, "Hey, could you train these two tigers how to hunt?" And I was like, and I remember talking to like the world's most respected scientists, and they said, "You can't do it. We've already tried." And I remember thinking to myself, "Yeah, but you're not me." Like that's the ego, that's the devil inside. That might be a judgment because if you fail, the ego screwed me. But because I succeeded, my ego is the only thing I had to rely on. And so I think that it's an interesting perspective for people to sit back and look at themselves and go, okay, too much ego can be too much. Yep. But certainly your ego should be your main champion in your corner. Your ego is going to be like, man, I know this is you. This is what you're good at. Dave, I know the world is saying you cannot get accepted by a pride of lions, particularly the second time I did it when they were man-eating lions. And everyone said, you better write your freaking will, friend.
These are not like the others. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to die. And in my head, I was like, okay, let's do the math. I know lions better than you. I freaking spent more time with lions better than you have. I have a vaster experience. I have my degrees. I have my captive experience. I have my wild experience. Okay, the math adds up. My ego isn't just puffing its chest out.
Yep.
I'm ready to. So I find that to be a fascinating introspection that I drew from our previous conversation.
I love that you say introspection. Sorry, Ryan, just real quick, because I don't think it's not an ever settled thing. It's not a volume you set. It's you need to be good friends with your ego. You need to visit it regularly. Sometimes it's going to knock you down, and sometimes you need to lift it back up, right? Like I think you say introspection, a regular kind of test of it.
It's a nurturing thing, I think. And so there's a certain part of like being able to understand yourself, to be able to nurture your ego, right? Like probably not that different than a pet or a child. Not to compare those two things because they're not the same, right? But like ultimately, like it's a careful balance of like this advice of things that you get in the world, as well as like what you figure out works for you. And I don't think that, let me say this. I think you're remiss if you cut off the nurturing of that ego too early, because like you said earlier in the show, Dave, like, you know, the chemistry of our brain and the chemistry of like the actual physiological science of humans is one thing, but the ego, which is kind of this weird thing where very clearly the mental and understanding meets the actual physiological component. It seems that those of us who are more open-minded towards like continuing to nurture that over time, using movement, using thought, and kind of like, you know, risk. We talked about this before in an episode, Mike. I think you and I even like disagreed a little bit on this. Is that like it's this balance of like what risk is comfortable for you. Very much so, your risk is like way down the chain, maybe than the normal person. However. Which explains some of your career, but that doesn't explain the way that you're able to like be balanced as a human. I'm not really leading this to this as like a question. I just think it's kind of like a declarative of like, or an observation of how I always end up seeing these people who accomplish the most in life and get to drive and accept the most from life are able to monitor and nurture that ego year after year after year of their life, you know, not just checking in with it as a lifestyle, not just checking in with it as like, you know, part of what they need to get in control, you know, like a lot of people approach things. Totally.
I think that's true. I think that there's nobody in the planet that's ever uniquely been successful without, you know, sticking your head above the clouds a bit, meaning you have to beat the odds a bit, and your ego is what drives you to do that.
Yeah. Hey, it's Ryan. Thanks for listening today. I'm curious, when we showed up before you started the episode, did we show up automatically in your feed because you've subscribed to us? Or are you still one of those people who's out there and we show up randomly on your podcast channel? What I want to ask you to do is to take a second, pause the episode, jump out and hit that subscribe button. It's helpful. We're everywhere. YouTube, iTunes, all the tunes, anywhere you might be able to search us. Find us where you listen and subscribe. We appreciate it.
Talk to me about being on a kayak surrounded by a pod of humpback whales, a feeding pod of because dude, of all the stuff I've seen you do, that made me more uncomfortable for some reason, like more uncomfortable than anything I've seen you do.
So interesting that you say that, because I think that there's a whole backstory there that I'd love to paint a picture that people would get a sense for the stupidity that is my life sometimes. I was on a project. This project was taking 18 months. So forgive me, because I had a lot of different islands I was working on, and we would bounce based on the season back and forth from those islands. So it was an island-based show. It was called Deadly Islands or Mystery of the Lost Islands.
What area of the world was it in, Dave?
The whales were in Alaska, but I was also in very close to Panama, the Galapagos, Falklands. Right. So we had 5 islands all across the world, and each place had some unique things going on with animals. So I say that because at some point someone said humpback whales. I'm a zoologist. I know the humpback whale. And they said bubble netting, and we're going to view them from a kayak. I was like, great. Never once did I say to myself, research. bubble netting, because most of the Alaskan stuff was about bears, right?
What is that phrase you're saying? Bubble netting? Bubble
netting is what we're going to get to. Bubble netting is a behavior, and this is exactly what your brain obviously works better than mine. Because I didn't say, what was that you were saying?
Well, now I know what it is.
Bubble netting? Gotcha. I'm going to go bubble net with some humpback whales. What I was hearing is brown bears in one of the most dangerous bear-filled islands in the world, and I'm going to go camp there. I wasn't hearing bubble netting on a kayak. So anyways, I consider humpback whale time as my day off from hopefully getting torn apart by a bear. So I get this inflatable kayak, which is the stupidest thing in the world, but the best thing that could have happened for whales, because whales use sonar. So if you have an aluminum canoe or something that bounces sound, they get a little bit nervous of it. So we had researchers, and as we're filming behind the scenes, we're always making sure that we behaviorally aren't affecting wild behavior. So you can have a actual government-based researcher that says, this is how you operate on the whales. So we were allowed to have a trajectory out of the kayak like any other kayaker would in the area, with the expectation that bubble netting was happening in that area. Fine. Kayaking. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, and please, if you haven't done what Mike's already done, hit YouTube, say humpback whale bubble netting, because I'm on the surface. So I'm only 2 feet because I'm sitting down above the water, and 40 feet, but it felt like 4 inches. These whales, 11 of them, mouth open, just
straight
emerge from the
vertically
water.
straight up, right?
Straight up, mouths open. Their mouths are wide enough to swallow my whole kayak. It was so terrifying because you never ever get perspective of how big a whale is. Even if you're in a boat looking down on a whale, you don't get it. You know, every time we see a spout of a whale, everyone's gone whale watching. You see a spout, you see a fin, you see a tail. If you're 30 feet from it and you're actually below it and looking up at it, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. Like, and as you say, I've been charged with lions with a chuckle. Like, whatever, lion. And so, anyways, it was probably the most phenomenal day in the world because I did not research what it was. I had no idea what it was. I saw it. It is spectacular. And let me explain it to those if you have now Googled it and come back. What happens is there's a pod. There's usually a leader in that pod. And they go around, and I think it's smelts. Don't kill me if it's something else. Where they blow bubbles in a cylindrical shape. So the leader will spin in a big, big circle, and those bubbles will trap the smelt of the fish they're trying to eat. And then the whole pod comes up underneath that sort of cylinder of bubbles where the fish feel trapped, and they come in with their mouths open, and they just scoop them all into their mouth. They have filters that let the water out and the fish go in. It is spectacular.
It's really amazing. Like, so by pod, it's 3 to 5 whales who
up to 11, 15.
Oh, okay.
They can be big. They can be
and
big.
They're like synchronized swimmers. Like, so again, if you look this up, or you should look this up, they're almost like synchronized swimmers who come out at like the same level. It's one of the most beautiful things when you consider that in the world. I mean, it's crazy.
I think you're absolutely right about that. And the one spectacular, so after I got a little calmer with the situation, and I'd seen it a few times, I was lucky to be out there for, I think, about 5 days. Maybe the third day, there was a whale that was behind me, and one of the guys was like, we were just hoping for a shot of me kayaking and a whale kind of coming up for a breath behind me. And because of this kayak, and I think because I'd been in there for 3 days now, so I think the whales kind of knew I was a part of the safe people. A big male came in and came up, and I was on his back and had to like slide back off it. Never ended up on camera, nothing like that. But for me, it was, I think, both intentional. I think it was the animal reaching out. Like I've had moments like this. It was
displaced water that the kayak was on. Like he moved.
I was not floating. I was on its back and 3 feet. Not that high off the water, but I was probably 3 to 4 feet above the water, and I like a little balancing point, and then the kayak started to slide backwards as he went down. I kind of went this way.
Any footage of that, or no? Like for you to even see it or anything?
That was one of those moments. Like I told you, there's some moments that are just for you, and it was. I mean, it has to be in my top 10. I could not think of 9 other moments that your eyes felt like they would sprain from being so wide. Like you're like, that just happened. And for me, the passion really is like, all these things are passionate about, but it's to have an interaction with an animal that wants to interact with you. There's nothing in my life that's more special. And in this particular case, we knew the whale was coming from quite a ways away. So it's very hard for my head to wrap around it not trying to do what it did. And it was so spectacular to me. It was definitely one of my moments that I'll be like, I will never forget this.
Yeah, we get humpbacks out here in their, kind of annual. I don't know anything about whales, but I think they annually migrate from Alaska down here where they birth their calves in this area. Yep. So if anything, it's the most, I don't know if lethargic is the right word for it, but my understanding is like the mothers haven't eaten in forever. They're just feeding the baby. So all of this action you're talking about, never ever have I seen anything like it before. So.
No, they don't eat there. They lose a third of their body weight when they're down in Hawaii.
Yeah, they're like so weak, right? They're basically just like sleeping at this point.
Totally right.
Dude, that footage and the tone in your voice, like, again, I've never seen you and thought that wasn't sincere, but there was a tone in your voice where it was just like, I'm out of here, man. Fuck this.
Right. This is real.
Yeah. No, it's funny. I have a pitch to my voice. Like clearly TV Dave is a lot more here.
Yeah.
That he is up here, but there's every now and again a moment of, and you're like, oh yeah, that's Dave. That's not TV Dave. That's Dave Salmoni pooping his pants.
I think that's got to be part of the appeal, man. Like, clearly as a person who's developing a very real brand image over time, right? Which is like part of a profession, but like, no matter what your industry is, all of them aren't that dissimilar. Some of them you have to record yourself, but like ultimately, like it's way easier to just fucking be yourself.
Oh, totally right. But interestingly, so you might not know this, Mike, you probably don't know this. My wife has just been introduced to television. So she's shot a full series. And I was saying to her, your first year is such a fun year because you don't know anybody but you. You don't have an on-camera personality yet. And then you start getting direction and you start getting told how, maybe a little bit more direction here, maybe posture per direction, maybe ways to speak direction. And then almost everybody loses themselves for a few years. And it takes a real pro to get back to becoming yourself again. So interesting. My wife, she's going to have a TV career for the next 4 years or so. So we'll see if she loses who she is or not. But certainly the version of her that's on camera now is definitely the girl I live with.
Can you share what industry, segment? So
my wife's an interior designer. There's a Canadian HGTV host that's been around for 15 years or more called Scott McGilvery. So it's Scott's Vacation House Rules. By the time this is out, I think it'll have been airing in Canada. Check my social. I'll obviously be promoting it or something. Oh, cool. But my wife's the designer for Scott in these vacation homes that they're renovating.
But this is her first TV.
Yeah,
orienting.
Totally right.
That's amazing.
An old TV friend of mine reached out and said, "Hey, they're looking for a designer for the show. Is Deborah interested?" And obviously, the first answer was no. I definitely do not want to be a dual television income family. And here we are.
Well, you saw what happened. Like I said the other day, my wife steps into my world. This isn't my world, but everyone's gonna. The problem is, Dave, is you're real lovable, bro, but there are better halves for a reason.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
Definitely. You said 4 years.
Fair.
If Deb chooses to step away in 4 years, maybe it'll only be for 4 years. I can't wait to see that. I know that name, that the Scott McGilvery guy. Like that dude's huge.
Yeah, he's been around, and HGTV is real popular. Home reno shows do well. She's great at her job. So it's gonna be great. And if it means I married young for a reason.
Yeah.
If I can retire and carry her purse for the next 10 years, I'll be happy to.
Smart man.
Do you think we might see some sort of joint show ever with which she designs this impeccable home and you are also a personality that keep these beautiful animals in the home? I could see that could be really a cool ever after conversion type of a thing, kind of like a Chip and Joanna, if you know who they are. I think they're the other HGTV people, but of humane animal care. That'd be cool, man. That'd be cool.
Yeah, who knows? It's been I've done a few build shows. I am a little bit handy, so You never know. You never know.
You'd be like the opposite of Joe Exotic, I feel like, in that category.
So I feel like there's a guy
exact opposite of Joe Exotic.
And kept a bunch of wild animals at his house. Dude, I didn't know, Dave. So I have to say, like, the timing of this, I would be straight with you, man. It is totally coincidental. Like, I didn't realize how big of a deal this Joe Exotic show on Netflix was going to be. When I reached out, I think I reached out over a month ago, right? And we just kind of been working on this. But like right now, there's two things being discussed in the world. COVID-19 and what's his name? Joe Exotic?
Joe Exotic. Totally right.
I honestly, truth be told, I had watched however many episodes that it was, fully thinking it was fake until you confirmed that it was real on the part of this episode that wasn't recorded before. Yeah. So when I was kind of done with it, to be honest with you, I was like, all right, this is fucking fake. This is like, okay, this is cool. I get it. But I watched till the end, which provided maybe a couple more episodes of just really wild meth fueled environment.
Yeah, I'll give you a window into my life. The time spans between when we last spoke and now is what, a week?
Yeah. It was last Thursday.
A week ago, I freely spoke to you about my opinions of that show.
Okay.
And since then, I've been given my instructions.
I was going to say, I bet you're not even allowed.
No, it's gotten so big that we as a now group where I represent and, as a bunch of professionals had to sit down and say, this is no longer just some show. People are going to off the cuff tell you, say, hey, what do you think about this? And
people are going to be asking you, right?
Yeah. It's not like, hey, Dave, what's your message about, pets and, tiger breeding? Like, that's an easy answer, right?
Yeah.
It's the sensationalization of this storyline has gotten so big that someone like me who feels like I'm a professional and what that is not what I don't want to be lumped into that group. We've now actually had to have a professional response and a plan and a means of separating. Like, this is not us. This is something completely different.
Yeah,
like whether someone killed their husband, whether Joe belongs in jail, whether they're all meth addict crazy people, that's all for you to talk about and decide.
Yeah.
My message is, you shouldn't be, breeding tigers to, animal husbandry. We all love everybody, but certainly I agree with you. It's exploded so big. I would never have thought when I watched it that I was going to call from work saying, hey, we need to have a discussion about this show.
Yeah,
so
like
we know
we
what
need
we're
to
saying.
have a press release, right? Like, that totally makes sense why your people would be like protecting against like, we need a consistent message here. The reason why we bring that up really isn't, I know your opinions on enough things to know what your opinion on that nonsense probably is. But the bigger idea in it, you just mentioned your wife is getting into show business. You've been at a 20+ year career in show business. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about just the negativity, the hard part of, and nowadays it's social media, but 20 years ago, it was there too, and you
man, 20 years ago, oddly, I've had this conversation a few times. 20 years ago, it was handwritten letters. So oddly, the difference is if you're going to sit down and handwrite and mail and find an address, you have to love that person.
Yeah, they really mean it.
It was so rare to get a handwritten hate mail for me back in the day. But once in a while, I was proud enough to get the odd letter of someone who just loved the show that I'd done.
Okay.
And then it transitioned, as you say, into social media. And I've told this story a few times, and forgive me if you've heard it. But the whole reason I got on Facebook was because a buddy of mine reached out and said, hey, have you heard of this group, We Hate Dave Salmoni? It's on a thing called Facebook. I'm like, what the frick do you mean? There's a group of people?
Oh, shit. Okay.
And so I have to then fake a login account to log in so I can secretly be a part of We Hate Dave Salmoni so I can hear what the hell they're doing or saying and what's going on. And so that's my introduction to social media. So all of these people who are talking, like Time Magazine this year put out this thing saying that trolling is America's new greatest pastime. Man, I've been exposed to trolling from such a long time ago.
Yeah, this ain't new. This ain't new at all.
But I have a great grasp of it now. As you've mentioned a few times, I'm lucky enough to be around people like Jimmy Kimmel, who is fairly polarizing because he he's happy to talk about what he feels about the current administration, how he feels about the healthcare system. And that's so polarizing in the United States that he gets either love mail or hate mail.
Yeah.
And because of that, his stars shine so bright that it's very educational to sit back and say, how do you handle it? Like if this is how you handle the positive and negative attention, there's definitely information for me to learn how to be a professional and handle that same bit of information. For me, I actually am worried a little bit for Deborah in that I've gotten to a point where I'm able to compartmentalize. There are absolutely times when someone gets me. They poke the bear. It's something I'm very proud of, and they accuse me of something, or they suggest fact that isn't fact. And it just gets under my skin a little bit. But then I can go for a run, take a deep breath, shout at the wall, and not give that person the time of day, so they feel like, oh, I got him, and then feed fuel to that negativity. I hope that I'm able to teach Deborah the same thing, because I know people that get consumed by it. You do something you're proud of and you love and you want to do more of, and then it only takes 2 or 3 people to tweet 20 times to have 60 fucking things a day, right? It's nothing for those people. When I get attacked by groups, it comes in the thousands because they're coordinated and they're willing to spend an hour a day attacking me. And that hour a day for those 20 people then becomes 20 hours for me if I actually want to go through it all. So you really do have to quickly learn how to say, compartmentalize it, put it where it needs to be, take it as a compliment to a degree. Whenever I'm most popular is when I'm getting the most heat.
For sure.
I feel like it is you're right about saying it is a really terrible part of the industry. You kind of do things because you love it and you want the people to love it that watch, and everybody else, you just not watch and leave me alone. Like, It's interesting. It's interesting that we don't live in a world where, I don't like that person, turn the channel. Most of those people are happy to tune in and say, how the heck can I screw this guy's life up?
Go out of their way to complain, right?
I'll say it's such a different dynamic, right? So this is not a show about my career in any way, shape, or form, but I will share with you that over the past decade of my career, part of what I do is healthcare consolidation. So that involves release of people's jobs, right? Oof. And so that's part of what I've done, all right? I have never gotten one letter or email or anything like that as compared to what you do. And I'm not going to compare to whether something is cute or right or wrong or those types of things, because everybody has to make their own individual perspective. I'm intrigued by animals, so I like to watch the stuff. But it does, and it is such an interesting human persona to glom on with such threat of hate. And I'm sorry, I guess you can't threaten hate. You can directly pass hate, but by passing direct hate and then threatening violence in such ways, it's such an interesting fucking dynamic that approaches your industry and a limited. It's not a big list of industries. To be honest with you, it's
animals get it the worst for sure. I think you're right. I have a somewhat charming story, not to cut you off, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I remember doing a show, and I'll try not to get into too much detail, only because I'd hate to trigger the reaction that I got from this. I was on a show. I was on Kimmel. And we were promoting Puppy Bowl, and part of Puppy Bowl, we had a pot-bellied pig adoption group because sometimes people will take in pot-bellied pigs and they get too big, so people get them out of their homes. Yeah, right. So Puppy Bowl is very much a big champion for adoptions. Every single animal on Puppy Bowl gets adopted.
Nice.
So anyways, we're promoting it on Kimmel. Jimmy asks me, hey, how big do these ones get? And because of the husbandry rules I have for all of our wranglers, we do a zillion things to make sure their animals are comfortable. And particularly for these pigs, their parents traveled with them just because, my microphone dropped. I apologize. The parents of these pot-bellied pigs traveled with them for the show because they like it. They like it. They feel comfort by it. They had a big pen to play in back behind stage. And the team at his show are more than happy to accommodate any animal needs. So the animal riders are big. So anyways, I had just handled mom and dad. Mom and dad were 12 years old. They were full grown. So I was confident in saying, 20, 25 pounds for these ones. Well, some pot-bellied pig group, and yes, there's pot-bellied pig
I'm sure.
groups.
Yeah.
Who reach out? I had no idea. They reach out to me and like, hey, I'd like you to print a retraction. That's information that is incorrect, and people think that they stay 20 pounds when there's no single breed that ever stays 20 pounds. They all get up way bigger, and then and so I think they're engaging because they care. Because how would a pot-bellied pig group be a bunch of angry people, right? You think that they actually care and they want to talk facts. So I give them all the facts. I'm like, hey, I respect what you're saying, but this is why I know I was correct about these particular pigs. The response was, fuck you, I'm going to kill you.
Shut up.
Wow.
No.
Yeah. They
Officially?
they're
That
not
was
listening.
their official response?
Online. No, there was a bunch of them. So there was a group that like as I say, they'll get a group of 20 people. They'll all get a same message and they'll all attack me. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and they do consolidated attacks. So they try to make themselves seem like a bigger group than they are.
Man.
And yeah, one of the first responses after I was like, I never respond to trolling. I never, ever, ever. I don't care. I just flip it. And to them, I'm like, oh, these are people that care about animals. These are people that really want to get the right message there. So I'm going to like have a discussion with them and make sure that we're all on the same page. And I'm going to fuck yourself. I'm going to kill you.
That's dude. You know what I always wonder, and this is just me wondering too much, is like, do we all like have people in our lives that secretly troll some people online? Because I don't think that I do. I'd like to think I don't.
I know a troll or two.
But the statistics would tell you that you do.
They have to exist.
I know a couple admitted trolls for sure.
Do they do it for lack of anything? Like, and I'm not this. We don't need to get into this conversation. PETA people are very specific, right? I think they just care about anyone doing anything with animals. The trolls you're talking
and that's
about,
a subset to trolling, right?
Yeah.
Well,
like that's.
I have a different perspective on that.
Subset.
I think what they are is. Yeah, go ahead. Never mind.
I think if you take, we'll save you some letters from some of the fans.
you.
Well, or maybe us as well. You know, we're always trying to boost the show, so fuck it, let's do it, right?
Yeah.
Ryan, who trolls you know? Like,
so to any regard, he's for sure one of our listeners, and he's an admitted troll, but he's an artist, right? And so he's a metal artist, and he makes some just beautiful things, manufacturing artist, designer. And so the way that you're like entered into trolling is through memes. So memes and an obsession with memes is like the gateway drug to becoming an internet troll. So that's where you like start is there. And so like I would say I've watched him probably over the past 5 years convert from like the guy who texts you the memes, and we all have somebody in our chain who like they over text you the memes, right? And you're like, all right, yeah, it's fine. You know, like that's the fourth one you sent today. Well, this particular guy is one of those guys. And so like, yeah, I know that for sure his Facebook account has been banned a couple times. And he's been flagged a little bit and removed. I want to say from Reddit maybe. And you know what he gets into is that he's really truly a nice guy, 100% a nice guy, a close friend of mine, but he is like libertarian beyond his health,
just loses
right?
It. Yeah.
And so, I don't know if like Canadian, like the translation, well, this sounds fucking stupid, but I'm gonna say it anyway. The translation between Canadian to American of libertarianism, Dave, applies.
We understand it. We understand it because
like we talked about 3%ers before, right? So like a 3%er is ultimately like absolutely a libertarian. Like that is the thing. And so, yeah, he was kicked. He had to start a side Facebook account that has a fake name. And so he could stay involved with it.
You know what I hate?
It's really weird, man.
But I don't
Now, we give him a hard time, to be fair. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead. But like we all give him a fucking hard time about this shit. So,
like we always say, you need your friends to keep you in check. And what ends up happening is you run out of friends. Like we're just describing a behavior that eventually resembles hoarding, that eventually resembles the shit that, no, that person isn't in my life anymore. Like, I hate to say it, but eventually enough of your friends find out that you're that troll. Like, that's
obsessive behavior of any kind. You're right. Will end a friend.
That's who we are.
We've all been there where we've like, I need to unfollow this person but I can't let them know I'm unfollowing, so you mute them. Like that friend, like I must have 100 friends on mute. I'm like I don't need, like, even the people who I kind of agree with politically. Like I say, like I'm not a huge Trump fan.
Yeah.
Let's say, not that I don't want to spend my day thinking about him.
Yeah.
Like, it's
just not a conversation I want to be a part of.
Right. So I go to my social media for entertainment, for a bit of fun. And so as I see that stuff, fuck, I hate this guy. Even if some of the points that they're making, I agree with, I'm like, oh man, like
this is exhausting. Not what I'm here for. Yeah. I don't come on Facebook to get, to make sure people are listening to me, right?
Yeah, or listen to your opinion. Yeah, I agree with that. It's interesting, and it does go back to some of the things that I do. You know this about me, that I have a professional handle online, and I have a hidden one, and not because I do anything that I'm afraid of getting caught for. It's that I'm happy to talk to you, Mike, about my family and about my friends and the things that I'm doing, but I'm not putting that out for human consumption. Yep. So my point to the people who are expressing their views on social media, I'm not following you because I think of you as an intellectual that I'm desperate for guidance in these subjects. I'm following you because we met at a pub 6 years ago, and so stop pretending that I'm here, that I'm hanging on your every word. I'm following you because I want to know what you're up to, how you been, like. And I think too many people confuse the two. So that's why I'm saying is like, if you want to follow professional Dave Salmoni, I recognize you're doing that because you want the animal stuff. So I'm not going to pump you full of, guess what my kids are doing on quarantine. Yeah. But if you're going to follow my other one, well,
you get what I want. You get what I want to share. And if you don't like it, just stop following me. Like, I don't understand the motivation to spread negativity. No. I don't get it.
I have a significant issue with it, but.
Sorry, I just want to retouch on something that you said, Dave, because I thought it was really, really good advice. When we just started talking about negativity, and I mentioned that Deb's getting into this world where she's going to be exposed. I thought it was amazing. You not only referenced Jimmy Kimmel, like, hey, this is someone that I have seen do really good at this, and I've been sitting down taking notes. And one of the notes that you talked about, and the word you used was, I thought, perfect, was compartmentalizing. We're not going to be able to eliminate the feelings that we experience when someone says we suck, right? Like I don't want to lose that part of my brain, but just make a little pocket for it. And I can't help but wonder though, if like you are in the I would imagine like people that deal with people's money, maybe in a slightly gnarlier environment, but like the PETA people, is there a group out there that is going to have such strong feelings about interior design? And I'm not trivializing the value and beauty of importance, but like, it's going to be a little bit more subjective, right? Like that was an ugly green or something, right? But not
because there's three elements to that. In animals, there's morals and there's ethics, right? Whereas a lot of subjects there aren't, especially in entertainment. There's no morals and ethics. And morals and ethics are much like religion and politics. You have yours, and they're kind of unbendable. Your morals, your ethic fabric, you're not going to get it from me. And so that's one part of it. And the other part, and this is going to be the derogatory side of it, is lots of people in this world are not accepted in social circles. There is a great part of the population that find it difficult to have a large group of friends, long-term friends, but an animal will always accept you. And those people become animal people. That's the lady that wears the wolf shirt. That's the lady that talks about her horses. And because of it, the passion grows within them because that's how they define themselves. So sometimes their soapbox is more about them attacking me is more about explaining their love and their voice being important than it has anything to do with what I've done.
It's not about you.
That's why Animals is the perfect storm, right? You'll never get that level of passion from paint colors, but you will get, like, Deborah will get the catty ladies. Nice sweater.
There's still going to be haters. Yeah. And
who does your hair?
That sort of like for you, I bet it's going to be really interesting to revisit this a year from now. Because I bet a year from now, you're going to be like, yeah, it turns out 20 years of people saying shit to me is nothing compared to the first troll I saw say something about you. Like, you're
totally.
You're going to go into, Papa Bear, whatever you want to call it.
Totally right. I currently daydream about getting my hands on people. I mean, I know jokingly I'm not going to follow through. But when they did it if they do it to my wife, the daydreams will be so intense.
No.
It might take me. So I usually to clear my head typically is when I jog. Well, my body's not a jogging body. I used to jog with your wife, and she used to laugh at me at both my gait and my inability to run. But I needed it to clear my head. I'm going to become a marathon runner if that trolling starts to get into too intense.
No, I bet you're going to be like 210. You know what I mean? I don't know where are you at right now, Dave? You're looking.
Well, I haven't been able to lift weights because I have bands and things. So it's probably coming down a bit, but I hover at 220, 222.
That's what I thought. I mean, I'm dude. When I was in Toronto, I was always like 205 to 210. When I moved here, I got down to like 180. Like
surfer's body,
dude. I just stopped. Yeah, I mean, I had no
all that fish.
I wasn't
fish and sunshine.
It was a different version of me.
I think that one of the things that I find as I get older is like that clean, pure protein is what makes the difference. And you have so much fresh access.
Yeah.
When you're so close to the ocean to that fresh, clean protein.
So much of a difference between just getting fish straight and not doing much with it compared to previously. And I goes without saying, but
tell me if you remember the first time this happened to you, because I do. And it's a moment for me. Do you remember the first time you were on the back of a boat or on the shore with some guy who was spearfishing, and he just popped up from the water, sliced up some sashimi or whatever, and you were all of a sudden eating it? To me, that was such a big moment for me. That I was like, wow, of course this is how people live.
Yeah.
I was really, and I've talked about it on the show a bunch of times, but I grew up with a really weird dad and, was subjected to a lot of things that a lot of kids growing up in Michigan weren't subjected to. Like Dave, I was born in the Middle East. So my dad was spearfishing in the Red Sea when I was, a little baby. And I have memories of that stuff from a really young age. And then it's I got to almost re-experience that again in my late 20s and early 30s. When I moved out here, it was like moving back to somewhere I had never lived before, if that makes sense. So many of the stories I've heard and kind of the version of myself that I've always kind of wanted to get more acquainted with, I came out here and it was like, holy shit, these guys do that stuff. And, that person is one of the best in the world to do that. I wanted to ask you, have you done any work out here in Hawaii with any of the shark stuff you were doing or anything like that?
No, I've worked with some of the experts that have come my way for sharks, but no, never have. Tiger sharks is something I've always wanted to do there because they have a nuisance problem out there. And I think tiger sharks are so spectacular.
They're so badass,
man. Definitely on the list.
Luckily,
Deborah's desperate to get to Hawaii, so it won't be hard for me to convince her.
Well, that's going to happen soon, and I also hope there's a future guest on the show that I would love for you to meet. His name's Kaiwi Berry, and his family has been doing the cage-free shark diving for
fun
decades.
I would love to. Let's do it. Let's do a podcast with him, and I'll get on it. I did
you would
a
love
show
Kaiwi.
I'll tell the story in detail there, but I'll tell you the beginning of it now. I was sitting in the office of the head of development of Discovery, and I was looking for work. I needed another project, and I had a producer that I was working with pretty regularly, but hadn't spoken to in a little while. I sit down, the head of development looks at me and goes, Dave, so Phil tells me you are a fantastic diver and you love sharks. I think to myself, I've never, ever even seen a scuba gear in my life. I've never even seen a shark in my life. But I know the business. If I want to have this adventure, I better shut my freaking mouth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yep. He goes, so you're going to go and try to see if it's smart to free dive with great white sharks. So this is back in this time, there was only one or two people doing free diving with white sharks. And I was like, yep. And I can remember in the chair, my bum was puckering. I'm like, oh shit, what am I agreeing to?
This is a terrible idea.
And then luckily the guy starts laughing. He goes, yeah, they told me you don't dive, but if you're willing to do it, we're gonna do the show. So if you bring the guy on, I'll tell in more detail. We actually free dove within 2 weeks of Learn to Dive, the top 3 most dangerous sharks in the world, and tried to see it. It's called Sharks Are They Hunting Us? So it's interesting.
We should do that because, we always, we've done a bunch of these episodes. I think you're like number 21 interviews wise.
Congratulations, guys.
But we always talk about like, how do we transition forward? And kind of the summary is just.
We lost. Looks like we're recording something, but.
Look at his eyes. That's the eyes from someone double punching.
Yeah, I got you. I got you now. We didn't just lose everything though, did we?
I'm back. Yeah. I don't know what happened there. I think yet again, we're going to have to talk about our technology.
We'll be all right. I'm sure we got it. Ryan, you want to close us out?
Sure. I can go ahead and close this out. I don't think we have Dave with us anymore, but I am familiar enough with the social media to get a little line going about where our listeners could follow him as they get tuned in. First is, I think Instagram is his biggest outlet. That's at Real Dave Salmoni on Instagram. That's where you could see all kinds of cool and updated continuous images with him. I think he has a personal Instagram as well that he mentioned. I'm going to let the people find that one themselves. The other thing that he has going on right now is the Animal Bites show that's on Facebook. You could find that on Facebook. You could see a bunch of Dave, as well as anything inside of Animal Planet. Really over the past 15 years, he is really located there a lot. You could get to any of those visuals or shows or anything on any of the streaming channels for Animal Planet. We are Convention Not Podcast. You can find us the same way. Get on the internet, search us. Thanks for sticking through this long episode. We're almost at 2 hours. Most of them come in around an hour or so. Dave had some really interesting introspective ideas that he wanted to share with us, so we ended up going just a little bit longer. Take care. Cheers.